My story is, I feel like it's pretty wild. I started life pretty smoothly. I come from a really happy home. I got two siblings, loving parents, 16 cousins, and I'm the oldest of all of them. What I love about being the oldest is all the babies. Whenever one of the babies were born into our family, you would always see me with the baby in my arms or a toddler on my hip. I love little kids and have for a very long time. We grew up in church, which added, there's always lots of babies and kids in church as well. My parents taught me about Jesus, so I just knew about him from a really young age and just believed him, believed that he lived in my heart and that he loved me, and that gave me a certain level of confidence. Then in my teenage years, I went to a pretty rough high school, so things changed around my teenage years. The kind of high school where if your name is written on the back of the toilet door, then you know that the bullies are coming to beat you up that week. The girls as well, girls and boys. No one was immune to these beatings. Thankfully I was. Thankfully I never had my name written on the back of the toilet door. But this environment taught me to fly under the radar. I learnt very quickly to blend in and not draw attention to myself. And after a few years of living this way, I kind of turned into that kind of girl, one of the girls that I was probably pretty afraid of at the start. This then led to me in my 20s when I found myself married in a pretty dysfunctional relationship, addicted to drugs, living thousands of kilometers away from my family and everything that felt normal to me, everything that anchored me to who I really was nowhere to be seen. So here I was living in a distant place where I had to find myself again. And it was really hard because I didn't like who I was. I weighed 45 kilos. I had dark sunken eyes. I was a shell of the girl that I once was. I had no confidence. I felt like that life had just been sucked from me. It was weird because I still believed in God. I still had the faith in the things that I used to believe in. But for one, I just didn't think that God could love me. I felt like he must be really disappointed with me for making the choices that had led me to that point. And then two, I'd always grown up with this sense of purpose, that I knew that I was born for something and that I was destined for a life of significance. Even though I couldn't articulate what that was, I knew that I was very far from that life at that point. And I just couldn't make sense of that. I couldn't make sense of why I'd made the choices I had and how I'd got to this point. So there was one particular day we're at our drug dealer's house and the boys are inside playing the PlayStation. I was outside just trying to get some winter sun. And I remember just thinking to myself, I hate my life. Like, how did I get here? I don't know. And so I said this to God. I said, God, I'm so sorry that I've got to this part of my life and I don't know how to move from here. I can't get out of this ditch. Can you please help me? Now, there was no audible voice from God, no lightning bolt, not even a sense of peace that I remember. But 2 weeks later, I feel like God answered my prayer very specifically, very personally and uniquely to me. Now, sorry for the detail, but I think you need to know the detail to grasp the story. But 2 weeks later, I didn't get my period. Now, I was on the pill. I'd been on the pill for years, never had any irregularities or anything. It had just worked for me. So I did a pregnancy test and it was positive. And I was like, okay. So I went to the doctor. The doctor said, yeah, if you're on the pill, you've never had any issues, it's probably a false positive. Don't worry about it. So, okay, I was young. I trusted him. So I went home and just continued with my party lifestyle. A month later, didn't get my period again. Did another test, positive. Went back to the doctor. He said, better do a blood test. Sure enough, positive. Now, I knew that this was God's answer to my prayer. The minute I saw that positive result on the home pregnancy test, I had this flutter of excitement, this bubble. You remember, I love babies. I love kids. I felt like I was a natural. All I'd ever actually wanted was to be a mum and get married and be a housewife. Like that's what I really wanted from life. So to see this positive result, I just felt like this was God answering my prayer. I couldn't make the changes that I needed to make to get out of this life, to change anything for me. Like I said, my confidence was in the toilet. I had no self-value. But for the baby growing inside me, I could make changes to change my life. I could slowly start to get out of this pit that I was in. So it was hard. It was a very hard season because I couldn't see far ahead. I couldn't see what life might look like in 12 months' time, but I knew I had to just make small intentional choices. The first one was giving up the drugs there and then. So the day that I saw that positive test result, I quit, and miraculously there was no side effects or no withdrawals, anything like that. Then one day I was staying in my kitchen and I just saw this picture in my head, and I had sons. I had many sons. I couldn't count. It's not like there were so many I couldn't count, but I couldn't tell you how many I had, but I just knew that I had sons. So that kind of, again, helped me just keep making small little choices to make life look different. Now, eventually my husband said, "You're not the girl I married," so he left. And I wasn't the girl he married. I wasn't the party girl anymore. So he left and I moved back in with mum and dad into their newly built extension, and I had baby Elijah. He was born healthy and happy, and we lived blissfully there for a little while. And now Elijah means the Lord is my God. I wanted to acknowledge God in this. I wanted to say, I know that you did this for me, and he is yours, and I thank you that you've entrusted him to me. So we have Elijah, who we call Eli as well. Now, when Eli was 6 months old, I was turning 25. So I went out to the pub with some friends and celebrated my birthday. I was at the bar with my friend and we were waiting to be served, and there's this hot guy beside me and he's ordering stacks of drinks. He's ordering a round for his friends. So I said, "Do you want to add a couple of vodkas to that for me and my friend?" He said yes. This started the conversation, which led to some dancing on the dance floor, which led to a sneaky kiss on the dance floor. And at the end of the night, he said, "Can I have your number?" I said, "You can, but I've got a baby at home and I'm going through a divorce. So up to you if you want to call." Thankfully he did, and we dated for a while, and eventually on Eli's second birthday, Glenn proposed. So yeah, that to me is wild as well. I was still wrestling in this time about who I was. I was still me, but I'd been this girl who was pretty wild for a while, and I couldn't just switch her off. She'd shaped who I was now, and I found myself back in church because I was living at mum and dad's. I found myself back in church with them, and I was this weird mix of good Christian girl and wild child, and it was really difficult. What added to the complication of that is people who love me were voicing their concerns around me dating Glenn. They were kind of like, "Yeah, shouldn't you be dating someone who's in church?" Because Glenn wasn't interested in church at that time. And I couldn't make sense of what they were saying to me, because Glenn was this amazing guy, so kind, so loving. His family were amazing. And they were saying that I shouldn't be dating him just because he didn't go to church at that time. I just didn't, I couldn't make sense of it. So I stopped going to church. I just thought, no, I choose Glenn. I'm glad I did. We got married, we had Noah, and then we had Jude. My vision of sons had come to life, and that is crazy, but so good. Then after I had Jude, I started experiencing this roller coaster of emotions, and I'd kind of, I still had faith, I still believed in God, but I didn't really pursue any kind of relationship with him. But once this roller coaster of emotions popped up, I was like, what's this about? I was like, oh, I haven't thought about God for a while. Maybe I'll just try thinking about him and his ways and the things I know of him and see how that goes. And sure enough, I started feeling better. Before I had this heaviness, this weightiness, and I was, snappy and negative. And when I found myself focusing on God, the heaviness lifted, there was a lightness, and I was I was different. I was just different. So I'd notice this, so I'd stick with it, and then it would fade and I'd forget about God. And this is what I mean by the roller coaster, up and down. So then I thought, well, if it's thinking about God, if it's connecting with God that's keeping me up and not with this heaviness, this gross feeling, then maybe I can do something about that. So I started trying to really intentionally keep God at the front of my mind. So I would leave a Bible on my bed. So whenever I walked in my room, I would see the Bible and I would remind myself to think about God. I would put a Christian radio station on in the car. So every time I got in the car, I was like, oh yeah, there's God. And I would remember him, and I would just have those positive words and things just spoken over me from the radio station. And sure enough, it worked. Like, I was more like this rather than the roller coaster. Then I started to crave being back in church. I just wanted to be around other people who I could talk about Jesus with. I wasn't really talking to Glenn about what I was experiencing because, to be honest, I was afraid of those words, "You're not the girl I married." I didn't want to hear those again, and I was afraid that if I turned into this crazy Christian, that Glenn wouldn't want to be with me. So I kind of just kept it to myself. But what I didn't realize is that I was changing from the inside out, and people were starting to notice changes in me. I remember this one day going to pick up Eli from school, and one of the mums said to me, "You're glowing, like are you pregnant again?" And I wasn't. I just knew that it was the kind of glow, the glow she was talking about could only come from being closely connected to Jesus. Glenn also started to notice some changes in me. He said that I just was different towards him, and I was calmer, and I handled things differently, and I was more joyful and peaceful, and I don't know, things that I couldn't have done on my own that were just internally coming out of me. Then at that point, I wasn't really, the boys and I were going to church, but I wasn't really nagging Glenn about coming. He was going through his own mental health issues at that time, and it was a really hard season for us. It was really hard for, obviously for him, but it was hard for me to know how to navigate that as someone who loved him, to watch him go through that. And he kind of became not the person I married. He was so different. He was a shell of the person that he once was. So my prayer to God was, God, help me to see him as the man that you created him to be, not who I see in front of me now. And God gave me this picture of a rose, and this rose just kept blooming, just petals just constantly coming out of it. And I felt like God say to me that the petals represented God's love coming out of Glenn and out of his heart, and that it would be undeniable, the love flowing out of Glenn, and it would be continuous. Now, sure enough, over time, Glenn came through that season of mental health struggles, and he is now the most loving, positive, kind person you've ever met, even more so than when I first met him. He's lovingly known at his office as Pastor Glenn, because people come to him for encouragement and just good wise words. He's amazing. So again, God has been so faithful to me in that, in pursuing what I knew in my heart was right, rather than just conforming to what other people wanted me to do. Now, like I said, my story is pretty unconventional. It's still being written. This is only a part of my story. I've still got a lot of my journey to go, but it is unconventional. It's pretty wild, and I kind of feel like you have to take the good with the bad. I'm still that good Christian girl / wild child. I can't take that away. I still love tequila and Marvel movies. I used to be heavily into drugs. I can't deny those things about me. That's who I am. But I also love God, and I love people. And so I'm this weird mishmash of things. But what I want you to take away from this is you are a weird mishmash of things too. You are so unique, and the things that make you unique are what is beautiful about you. I love seeing the gold in you and calling it out, telling you and reminding you and showing you that you are valuable and your story is meaningful and it can help others as well. That's why I tell my story. That's why I always ask other people to tell me their story. It's also why I've claimed a Bible verse as my life verse. It says, do not be conformed to the behaviors and patterns or culture of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now, to me, that says that we are all unique and we're not meant to be little clones of each other. We're not meant to conform and all be exactly the same. We're meant to trust in our God-given uniqueness, and we are meant to be transformed by the renewing of our mind, that God will transform us from the inside out when we focus on Him. My life is a living version of that verse, which is why I've claimed it as mine and why I passionately teach things around these themes and why I love coaching. So please go and explore the coaching programs on my website. Please connect with me on Instagram. I would love to champion you and cheer you on as you continue to write your story. Thank you for listening to mine, and I hope we get to meet sometime soon. See ya.